Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session of our program. We have heard in the past few months from a range of leading experts from all over the world in the fields of cybersecurity, international systems, climate change, and nuclear nonproliferation. And we're honored to have Dr. Henry Wang with us today to deliver the closing remarks. Dr. Wang is a former counselor to the State Council of China and is the founder and president of China's leading non-governmental think tank, Center for China and Globalization. He has held many key roles under the Chinese government's government ministries as well as international organizations. Dr. Wang is known outside of China for being a candid interlocutor about China's domestic and foreign policy issues and has been invited by leading global think tanks such as Brookings and CSIS, among many others, to participate in Track 2 talks and discussions. His expertise covers a wide range of areas, including China and globalization, global governance, trade, investment, as well as international relations, with a focus on the US-China relationship. Dr. Wang, without further ado, I will hand the floor over to you. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to give this talk, and it's really a great pleasure to join you. And I think I gave a talk here a few months back. As last time, I think it was in July. I was in DC. Actually, I gave a talk. But I think since you are all related with international studies, with the international relations, I would really want to talk a bit about the recent development, and also particularly for the last half years, we've been traveling around. CCG actually led a delegation. Actually, we went to Singapore, we went to United States, New York, Washington, and then we went to also to France, Paris, and then Berlin in Germany, and Brussels in European Union. So it was really a big trip we did in June and July this year. It was actually the first Chinese think tank delegation ever visited 3 continents. So we found quite a lot of interesting things. And actually recently, again, I just recently got back. We made another trip in November. Actually, we went to Singapore and then to attend quite a few meetings there. And then we again also went to Europe, Berlin and Brussels again, and then also Paris to attend the Paris Peace Forum. I'm serving as a steering committee member of Paris Peace Forum. So this year, Paris Peace Forum was really quite fascinating to attend. It's the first time, I think, since pandemic, they are having really an offline event. So from the last 2 trips I had in the past 6 months, I really think that the world has changed a lot. In the perception among each other, the distrusting has been built up. There's a negative sentiment on the world economy, and of course on the this whole global energy and food also shortage to some extent, and of course this Ukraine-Russian conflict is also is among the top agenda of our discussions. And of course further would be the China, the discussion on China, when China will finish its quarantine and maybe zero COVID and things like that. So there was quite a lot of concern, and of course there's many people interested about the future of Taiwan and what about the trend that we're developing. So that impact not only across the street but also the whole world actually. So what I found is interesting is from our last 2 trips is that there are several very obvious points that I can make. First is that I think we have met so many people. We had about altogether 50 days visit outside China altogether. We had about over 100 events and meetings and all kind of forum. We attended over a dozen big forum. Like I was in Singapore, I attended 5 forums, notably the Street Time Forum, and of course also the Bloomberg New Economy Forum, and of course the Paris Peace Forum. So all those visits, including to the think tanks, to the the trade chambers, government agencies, and of course also to the variety of associations and civil societies in large. We found that people are really interested in engaging in dialogue. That's something I think number one that findings that we have is people really want to engage in dialogue, even though we may have a different standpoint or different ideas and thinking. So that's really 3 years of a pandemic has separated people, and then they really want to have a lot of talk. So that's number one I find, and I think that is really starting to getting probably back to normal soon, because we can see that recently we had a list of a parade of leaders, of global leaders visiting China. Starting with Chancellor Scholz from Germany at the beginning of last month, and then we had quite a number of leaders visiting China. Recently, just this week, we had Michel of European Council President visiting China. And of course, President Xi also attended the G20, and he met a number of global leaders, G20 leaders, and APEC leaders as well. And we know that the French President Macron is visiting China. And then President Xi and President Biden actually mentioned that they're going to have resume the high-level diplomatic visits. So we're probably expecting Secretary Blinken to visit China early next year. So actually, we're starting to see these the dialogues, the visits happen. So that is really, I think, the battle needed for this for this world plagued by this pandemic. So I think our trip started in June, and at that time there's no visit of any kind, and then we gradually see that revive. Now we have more people coming out, and still probably there's still a bit less coming to China, but I assume this will come soon. And then even for the COVID situation in China, we see that there are already different cities have a different policy now. They are starting to relax. And I think for the last week, the vice premier in China in charge of this COVID policy, she called the two state councils meeting on different experts and health agencies, and then no longer there's a zero COVID policy being mentioned. I think that is a big shift. So I think we see a lot of the changes probably happen in the near future, and I think Hong Kong probably would be a model for China to look at. Hong Kong have a large daily cases, but then I think they can coexist with them, and then trying to get under control, but not really disrupt the normal economy and daily life. So that's something I find during our trip, is that this is really going to be more interesting. And then the second point is that I would like to see. I think we are starting to see the traffic starting to pick up. So that's a good thing. The second thing I would like to say is that there's a lot of changes now. There's a lot of perception changes. And then, for example, one of the biggest changes is the globalization. I mean, I was very surprised to see. I mean, the United States used to be a champion of globalization and doing a lot of things in that respect. But now it seems there's still conservative. There's quite a bit domestic opposition towards more open free trade, and then we even see decoupling going on to some extent. So I think that is not really a healthy sign, and I think that the whole world should really still, we cannot certainly we cannot go back to good old days, but we can certainly put a floor and put a guardrail, and then make things that really that beneficial to the world. I mean, China and the U.S. being two largest economy, we have a more responsibility to not see the world economic going down, that affecting the lives of many countries. So I think, I really think China and the U.S. should find a way to communicate. So I really hope that we can see the more U.S. top officials coming to China, not only on the international relations, but on the business, on the finance, on the climate change, on the digital, and on all those things. So that'd be really great. So that's something I found, that this globalized area that every country does its own now. So that is not really good. So I would think, it'd be great that, for example, we have some consensus, like climate change is an imminent threat to the humankind. So why can't we all work together? I mean, the COP27, we see there's some progress, but not ideal, and we really want to see, China, US, EU, and all those big countries, work together on this issue. And second is the infrastructure. I see the whole world is really, lagging behind the infrastructure development, and that also out of the experience China has. China has developed hugely on the infrastructure, and so that can be really worked together with other countries. For example, China is, this year has opened a high-speed railway to Laos, and then they are completing their high-speed railway in Indonesia. They're having another one in Malaysia, in Thailand. So you can see the connectivity is really going, in infrastructure-wise, is really making progress. And so I know that China has proposed Belt and Road Initiative. U.S. has proposed the B3W, Build Back Better world. So that is really something that I think BI and the B3W can maybe work together. And EU has proposed the Global Gateway. It's again also infrastructure. And I think even G7 leaders has put forward a global infrastructure plan. So I'm thinking, I think this world we really need something to work together. And also we can see probably even in the future the post-Ukraine-Russian war construction of reconstruction of Ukraine, and would be also a big need for that. So I really think that why can't we work together? Have something positive narrative for the globalization. Let's work together on the infrastructure. I remember very well, when China was just opened. The 1980s and the 90s, and the World Bank comes in, Asian Development Bank comes in, OECF, everybody. So that really helped China also build up its infrastructure. So now I think all the developing countries and the global South, they're really very disappointed about the globalization process, because they are not standing to gain any benefit from the developed countries probably. So I'm thinking that U.S. is leading the World Bank, and China is leading the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and Japan is leading the ADB, Asian Development Bank, European Construction Construction Bank, and of course the Latin American Development Bank. I mean, all those developed banks probably can work together, because they are all run designed according to the similar charters and regulations. They share a lot of similarities. So I think maybe World Bank, AIB, ADB, and other development banks can work together and really take a chunk of a BI, B3W, and G7 infrastructure plan, and let's really find the global South developing countries to help to work with. So that would be really great to reshape this globalization momentum. And the other thing I see is the WTO, because this is the backbone of the prosperity. In addition to the World Bank, IMF, WTO is really, the trade has really built the boom of the world. I mean, the world has already now, compared with the Second World War, we are already 500 or 600 times more, doubled and tripled, 500 or 600 times more now than 70 years ago. So it's enormous prosperity, built up now, and we should really continue to do that with the trade and investment. So I think the WTO is a backbone for that, and WTO has not really, has played the role that it designed to play with. And I think that we need to have the WTO appellate body be really restored. We should really push for WTO progress. I mean, I'm glad to see last year at the MC ministerial meeting, MC12, the Fisher Agreement has been reached, and then also there's also China, US, and EU reached something on the vaccine, IPR issues on that. And also China has proposed, I mean, I was there at WTO 2019 on this, plastic emission to the ocean. How can we get rid of or ban the plastic emission to the ocean? I mean, so that has been actually signed up. China proposed that and has been signed up with 60, 70 countries now already. So we hope that, there could be some positive stories to really encouraging this WTO to move forward. So I think infrastructure, of course, climate change, infrastructure, and trade are probably three or four most important backbone for our globalization. And so we need to really support that. China should really also can work with other countries, and other countries can work with China to implement that. And then finally, the thing about globalization is really the globalization of the movement of the people. My think tank, Center for China Globalization, just recently released, helped release the, International Organization of Migration's World Migration Report. We have done that in 10 years, 5 editions every 2 years. We translate and publish in China, and we hold a big event to promote it. See, this is really, the pandemic has also slowed down people's movement, and of course we see a lot of refugees happen, and that is not healthy. But the normal movement of the people, has been really been hindered and really slowing down. And for example, China used to have 150 million outbound tourists, flooded the world and spending, buying, and helping the local economy. That was really welcomed in many countries. I was in France, for example. I was twice in Paris in the last 6 months. I mean, when you arrive at Paris airport, Charles de Gaulle, you only see 3 languages of all the signs, French, English, and Chinese. So they are expecting a large Chinese tourists. So hopefully we'll see that happen in 2023. And so that's what I mean. But that also the student movement has been slowing down. China used to be the largest student sending country to the United States every year, with over 300, 400,000 people going there. And now we see that there's only 290,000 now in the United States. Still the largest, but then the number of annual people, students going there is coming down. So we hopefully that after the pandemic, we'll see the number pick up again. So what I mean is that people exchanges, people to people, student exchanges, tourism, those are really globalization momentum that has been set back by this pandemic. But I don't think you will really stop that. I mean, people these days are really globally intertwined and interconnected, and I'm sure once the pandemic is under control, people will start to travel, and things will be probably more coming back better. So what I'm saying is that we are having seen so many globalization setbacks, but we need to really, make all the concerted efforts for all of us to restore, and then to really support the global development and the global, the prosperity for all the things we need to happen. Of course, fighting the pandemic, climate change, and of course we need to restore the business. We need to restore the trade. We need to, strengthen the infrastructure. We need to do the, of course, the people-to-people exchange, tourism, student exchange, and migration. Of course, talent mobility and all those things. So I think all of those elements of globalization has been set it back, has been really greatly impacted. But then, even for that kind of impact, the conditions, the seeds are still there. I think once the time is right, a condition is right. Yeah. So what I'm saying basically is that globalization has a huge setbacks, and on top of that, we had this pandemic, and we also have this Ukraine-Russian war going on right now, and so that's really not healthy. And I think that for all the government, for all the countries in the world, I think now probably, even though the globalization has setback, I really have two proposals basically. We see globalization in all those fronts I mentioned above, but I really have two proposals to really to want to talk about how we can make things better. Why is that? I think in addition, we should really strengthen the multilateralism. I mean, the United Nations, we should really strengthen it. Of course, even for the Ukraine crisis, I was proposing last time when I was talking here, we should really have a 7-party talk, P5 member countries plus Ukraine plus EU. We should really, have a talk and then really have a peaceful solution, a negotiation out of the current crisis. I think in the end, we have to talk. We have to sit down, we have to talk, and that's really the only way we can see the crisis getting resolved. So that's really, I think, strengthening multilateralism. And of course, not only that, but we have to strengthen WTO, IMF, World Bank. I'm even thinking we should have a public World Infrastructure Bank alliance. Like AIIB and the World Bank and all the other countries work together. So multilateralism is really very important for all of us to strengthen, to talk. And then I think that while we have this huge multilateralism, all those UN system and WTO system being jeopardized, and I think for some extent, probably another way to supplement that is to have regionalism. So I'm glad to see that we have Asian Pacific. Asian is really doing well. ASEAN is doing quite well. And so we can have with China on the RCEP. Now it's the largest regional free trade agreement. And then China is also want to join CPTPP. And now we see, of course, there's a DPA on the digital for the region as well. And then we see this APAC, Asia Pacific Summit has been, why can't we really, if Asia has a RCEP, CPTPP, maybe we could in the future have a FTAP, free trade agreement for the whole Asian, the Asian Pacific. So that is really something I think, if globally we cannot push forward, maybe we should do regionally to do that. I think China probably can play a lot of role in terms of for the Asian region, Asian Pacific region, and ASEAN region as well. So that's something I'm thinking about. We should do. And then the other thing we could do is also let's focus more on economic alliance rather than maybe more on the security alliance. The whole world is really some of the war. We have for example, we have NATO, we have Five Eyes, we have AUKUS. It's a nuclear submarine alliance between US, UK, and Australia. AUKUS, and then we have a Quad. Security alliance, and then now we even have IPAF. So there's so many security-driven alliance. I think it's not really healthy, and probably we should really make the world more economic alliance rather than the security alliance. So that's my second recommendation. And then thirdly, I'd like to say that we should have more basically the each country should pay a lot of attention to its own domestic issues. So you can see China actually in just concluded the 20th Party Congress about a month or so ago that China has proposed you're going to follow the Chinese path of modernization. Basically, you see China has a very unique hybrid economy. You have a 60% GDP was made by the private sectors. You have another 20% of probably SOE for all the domestic challenges, public safety and social responsibility and public welfare and all those dirty challenging work SOE is performing. So it's you can regard that as kind of a government social plan through SOE. But then you have another 20% multinationals in China. And then multinational, for example, they employ 40 million people in China. I mean, imagine just Foxconn, Apple's subcontractor employs 2 million alone, just one company. And then they generate about 10% Chinese GDP, and then 50% of China's import-export. So this kind of unique hybrid model of Chinese economy, majority is private sector, you have some SOE, you have some multinational. If you count a private sector and multinational, 80% of Chinese economy is private, basically. So that is really a very healthy path for China to continue this open and reform on that. And also China talk about common prosperity. And China common prosperity means that, they realize that if they do not have your domestic issues solved, if you have a large, very unhappy middle class or working class or peasants or farmers, your country will be really anti-globalization, will be really paralyzed, will be really difficult to manage. I mean, let alone 1.4 billion people, a country as large as China. So China has realized that, and China has for the last 4 decades, and particularly for the last decade, they have get rid of the last 100 million, extreme poverty. And so China for the last 4 decades has eliminated 800 million people out of poverty. And that's a huge success. And 10 years ahead of a UN 2030 agenda on poverty alleviation. So you can see, but then the common prosperity, there's still cause for that. The reason for that is, you lifted 800 million people out of poverty from rural area, basically. But what about 300 million migrant workers in urban area? So that's 200 to 300 million migrant workers that we need to really upgrade them. And then if China has created a 400 million middle class, but what about 1 billion people that are not in the middle class? So I think in order to avoid the phenomena we've been seeing in some countries that very tiny percent of the top bracket is equal to almost 40-50% of the bottom mass population. That's not healthy. That's why whenever there's an election, China always become a scapegoat and being talked about. So I think country probably should really concentrate on its own domestic issues and really build on the domestic, handling the domestic challenge. For example, now China is really having this huge challenge of how to contain the COVID-19, but at the same time, maintain economy development. And that's a huge challenge China is facing right now. I mean, at this moment. But I'm sure China will probably get out of that. But China has done so well in many other areas, like China has built 2/3 of the global speed railway. I mean, China also has done, for example, there's about 4.5 million 4G stations across China. There's another 2 million 5G stations across China. I noticed some, I've been traveling for the last 6 months. In many countries, many places still 4G. I mean, 5G could be just started, but China is already several hundred million people has 5G iPhone already. So you can see the development in China, infrastructure, connectivity. I mean, also trade. China's international trade last year has gone up 30%. It's really shockingly very high international trade. So you can see when the world was actually locked down in the last, before last year, and then China was really stabilizing the global economy, and China has been contributing to the global economic growth for the last 10 years over 30%. So I think China has a setback now. China is really, we want to see how China can bring that back at a higher economic growth level, because China has to have that. China has every year, there's about 10 million college graduates coming out of Chinese university each year. And among its working population, China has about 280 million people that has college education. So China has a huge talent pool, but also have a huge challenge to how to find a job for those people. So there's many things China has to do right and to do that. So maybe I talk for a few more minutes, and then we can probably start discussion. What I'm thinking is that now with this whole world, we certainly cannot go back to the old days. I mean, people are thinking, oh, we can go back to the era that we just decouple, like in the Cold War era, but that's not possible. China was not Soviet Union, and I think during the Soviet Union era, the economy wasn't really depend on each other. But now, the whole value chain, the downstream, upstream is all many are in China, and China is supplying the world in many healthy ways, and so we all really intertwined, and also there's David Ricardo's competitive advantage. I mean, if things that China is doing well, if China has all the resources, talents, and efficiency, like 95% of iPhone was made in China. I mean, that's 724. I mean, just in Zhengzhou, one city, making those iPhone 14, there's a 500,000 or whatever, or 200, a quarter million of workers working there. Enormous. So I think that thing cannot be easily replaced. And given the hardworking, really there's a very efficiency and effectiveness. So I think that basically the globalization, we have a setback, but then the world is no longer the world 50 years ago, 30 years ago. We are already intertwined. So you can slow down a bit of that, but I don't think you can turn that around, or you can change the mega trend that countries still has to work with each other, still has to really benefit from each other. So that's my first belief. Second, I think also the global information exchange has already totally different than 50 years ago or 30 years ago. I mean, at that time we only read newspapers. We can read a few books. Now basically everywhere you go, you are digitalized, and you have an explosion of also knowledge and also how fast we're connected and people connected instantly. Anywhere you call, anywhere you dial, is enormous. I remember when I was studying in North America, I only make a phone call probably every 3 months or half a year. Each phone call cost me $30-40, which is astronomical numbers at that time, 30 some years ago. So it's really incredible, and so the changes we're having now. So I think that will continue, of course, with all those digital development, biotechnology change, and all the space technology change. That are all going to have a lot of impact. I was at actually Paris Peace Forum about half a month ago. I was giving a few talks there, but one of the theme of this year's Paris Peace Forum is they're not talking about global governance. They're talking about space governance. The space governance, how to handle this debris, how to handle the satellite, how to handle the air rockets and into different regions. What about near miss, and what about what about in the future? How can we really jointly exploit the moon, the Mars, and all those places? So they're talking about issues like that. So I think that is unthinkable also many years ago. And the other thing, finally, I would like to say is that the people's connectivity is enormous. I mean, 30 years ago. So, for example, when I went to Canada and the U.S., my overseas studies, there's only a few thousand Chinese students study abroad at that time. Probably on a yearly basis. Now you talk about 700,000 every year. Before pandemic. Going out, and so China probably until now accumulated about 10 million talent have studied overseas or coming back and forth. So that, and also you can see diaspora community is growing, and there's a huge Espanol community in the U.S., Chinese Asian community in the U.S. and in Canada, and so the whole world is gradually. The demographic changes is also hugely important, and then of course you see the countries aging. China particularly, there's almost 200 to 300 million people in China is above the age of 60. That's and then that number is going to shoot up even higher. And so I think the technology, innovation, development, AI, and all those things, I think will really continue. And then, so that's why I'm still cautious, optimistic. I think technology will prevail, and this people's bond and common sense will prevail. And of course, also we are facing the common challenge and the threat. That we have to really work together rather than we work separate. No country can work with climate change by itself. You have to work together. Pandemic, I mean, this is really a big mistake that we don't work together on the COVID. I mean, every country does its own. That's very unfortunate. But we see on a small box and on those Ebola, all the big countries work together with UN, with WHO, and then we overcome all those challenges. So in the future, I think for those pandemic, we have to work together. And so we have so many common threats. It's silly to fight among ourselves, or we have such a big, big disparity and the big egos dividing us. So I think that we really should work together. And then of course there's many positive side. Of course, the trade is also cannot be compared with used to be. I mean, when we had the war, at that time, the world trade is really minimal. There's no huge cargoes or container or big shipping of gigantic goods made everywhere. But now it's everywhere. It's the trade is so much intertwined, and so how can the humankind abandon all those convenience of the modernity and the modern era, and then we go back to the primitive days of the law of the jungle. So I don't think that really is the way to go. So we're facing, of course, definitely we are still facing threat. we are facing all those uncertainty, but I think I really hope that we're going to amplify the good part of the human side and really bring out all the good rational thinking, and then that's why I think the big countries like US, China, EU, this G3 plus the other countries, G10 or G20 and Global South should really work together. So I think that I'm quite optimistic and with caution, but I still believe that humankind will find a way to overcome its weakness, and then we'll let humanity prevail. So that's my brief talk, and then we can probably get into some discussion Q&A after this. Thank you.